This is the BBC television service with a programme specially for viewers in Northern Ireland.
This first edition of Ulster Mirror is introduced by Sam Pollock.
Good evening to you from Glencairn, Northern Ireland's first television transmitter, which now every other Friday will be bringing you Ulster's own television programme. It's a tiny transmitter, as you can see. In fact, though there are buildings here at Glencairn, the actual apparatus is housed in a van, rather like the vans used over the water for outside broadcasts. This programme of ours, like many of the others you see, starts in London and travels up the line and over the link to Kirkashotts. The post office here picks up the signal on a special receiver, and the engineers at Glencairn do the rest. So, from the van inside a hut 400 feet above sea level, the people of Belfast, the Lagan Valley, and the towns on Belfast Lough are served by BBC television. It's a small beginning to something that will reach out further in the future.
The transmitter in the Glen will hand over next year to one that's altogether more high and mighty, a transmitter on a mountain. 1,200 feet up on Divis, you can look out on quite a bit of Ulster, and it's here since early summer that contractors have been at work. Well over a mile of new road runs over the moor to this windy spot.
Our cameraman, Douglas Wolfe, says the wind's always blowing up here. He's visited Divis a number of times to see first the foundations settling down, then the walls of the buildings beginning to rise. The walls are now well up and the roof should be on about Christmas. Then, early in the new year, the equipment will be coming in, and soon after that, the 500-foot mast will be arriving. The mast will balance on a plate of concrete, and you can see also the anchor blocks for the stays of the mast. By next summer, Divis should be in action, bringing television to the greater part of the province.
But come back in time now and see something of what's been going on in Ulster. We thought you might like to take the road to Ballykinler camp to see the Duchess of Gloucester with the King's Own Scottish borderers there.
This was one event during the last official royal visit to Ulster. The Duchess is Colonel-in-Chief of the regiment, and during the inspection she often stopped and spoke. Sergeant Devaney was one of several wearing medals won in Korea. And now to the main part of the proceedings. The Duchess of Gloucester's personal piper, Pipe Major Donald McKinnon, marches forward, turns, salutes, and then receives a banner bearing the Duchess's own coat of arms. The banner, attached to a drone of the pipes, will be carried on all ceremonial occasions. And now the Duchess was to address the battalion on parade.
I understand the battalion is to remain here for the present, but wherever you are stationed, I take the greatest interest and pride as your Colonel-in-Chief in your well-being and your good repute.
Finally, to the appropriate end of all such occasions, the march passed by companies led by massed pipes and drums and military bands.
The Duchess spent almost the whole day at Ballykinler camp. After the formal parade in the morning, she visited families of the men stationed there before returning to Belfast. The film camera reflects for us now another glimpse of history, something that is no more the Belfast tram. Even if they'd still been running, you would have had a job to see them last week. we were having our first taste and sight of fog this season.
And in the fog outside the City Hall, a monster was at work, tearing up the street as hard as it could go. Some local wit has dubbed it the toothpick. In the past few months, it's become a Belfast character. Not everyone knows that the toothpick is something of a local device. An ordinary excavator with the bucket taken off and a hard steel tooth in its place. But some jobs it can't do. It's not delicate enough for feeling its way around traffic light pads and manhole covers. So the pneumatic drills get to work, while the oxyacetylene cutters dispose of the tram rails in manageable lengths. Anything like this can be guaranteed to produce a crowd. The bowler-hatted and the hatless, the young and the old. Every one of them fascinated.
The whole outfit moves around the city with a bite here and a pick there in a way that mystifies the onlooker. By the time it's finished, 250,000 square yards of sets and something like 15 miles of tram line will have been lifted. And traffic has still to be kept moving, hence what appear to be random activities, with only about 1/4 mile of road being dealt with at one go. Another contractor relays the roadway after the toothpick has departed. So far, about 1/4 of the job is done, and Belfast's hard-wearing but dangerous sets are giving way to the modern metalled road. But in the country, there are jobs that look like never being done.
What weather the farmers have been having. First, a late cereal harvest, meaning hardly any labour for lifting the potato crop. Despite this, it's not been too bad in the eastern counties. This was a farm in County Down and a crop of Arran pilot seed. The conditions at this farm were better than in most places, but even here the ground was anything but right for the job, as you'll see.
The hard graft justifies the break for tea. But on many farms, the ground is so soft that machines can't be used, and workers are having to do the whole job by hand. And sometimes there's so much water that nothing can be done. We went to Coleraine a while ago to see how things stood there. Children, of course, were off school for a week or so and were helping in the fields.
The big question has been, of course, will there be fewer potatoes off the farms this year? With only a week or so to go, it looks as if the crop will be a good deal smaller than usual. One authority says, though, that Ulster should be able to supply all the seed potatoes that Britain and other countries want. And because there's usually a big surplus, there should be no general shortage here at home. The Ulsterman should be able to enjoy his potatoes in the time-honoured manner.
From the apple of the earth to the apple of the tree. Brambles, in fact, and another important crop for the Northern Ireland grower.
Again, I'm afraid it's a matter of yet another poor crop. Bob Lappin's been picking apples for 50 years and seldom remembers working in such a quagmire as has existed this autumn in many Portavogie orchards. It's hampered work and is the backlog of weather that's turned what otherwise would have been a good crop into a yield much below normal. All the same, this orchard at Knocknamuckley has produced about 4,000 bushels, and that's a lot of apples by any standard. Most of them will find their way to the Scottish market in the new year. But first, they'll spend the winter in a gas house, refrigerated and given just enough oxygen to let them live and breathe, so that they reach the market as fresh as when they were plucked from the trees.
Others, of course, go straight to the canning factories to be peeled, cored, quartered and cooked, and then clapped into cans for the catering trade. They use 7-pound cans mostly. Other apples are pulped for jam making. After the tin is sealed, the crates move to a sterilizing steam oven for the final treatment. Bill Buckley is one of those who watch over the quality of the Ulster apples that are shipped to hotels, factories and restaurants in many parts of the world.
Now, talking of shipping, there's a harbour been in the news lately, down on the outside of the Ards Peninsula. In fact, it's a harbour without ships, a fishing port without a fleet. The reason being that Portavogie's harbour is being reconstructed. Engineers of the Ministry of Finance have been on this job for 2 years now, a scheme of major improvements for Down County Council and the Ministry of Commerce.
Before all this was going on, Portavogie could be entered only within 2 or 3 hours of high tide, and then the weather had to be favourable. Now the work of improving the entrance and deepening the harbour is nearing completion. Portavogie's fishermen working from other harbours have had a long wait, but when they do come back, their harbour will be an all-weather port with room for 40 or 50 boats and with wharfage for coasting vessels as well. They're talking about a cooperative scheme for marketing their catches and running a carrier vessel for the big markets. Also about reopening the kippering factory at Portavogie. So there's an urgency about work on the harbour which has meant a lot to the community for many years. New facilities should mean new prosperity for the village with a new white harbour, Portavogie. Now to the final part of this evening's programme. Ulster's Prime Minister and his wife left London this week, outward bound for Australia. Before they left Belfast, Ulster Mirror went to Stormont House to take pictures of Lord and Lady Brookeborough at home.
The weather was kind, and the border terriers, Sally and Lizzie, were cooperative too. The Prime Minister and Lady Brookeborough will reach Fremantle in the middle of next month. They will be the guests of the Australian government until they leave by air for New Zealand towards the end of January. After that, they'll be the guests of Mr. Holland, the New Zealand Prime Minister. They will return home from New Zealand by the Panama Canal and expect to be back in Ulster about the middle of March. The Prime Minister has said that he expects to meet many Ulster people during his tour and that he will do everything he can to advance Ulster's interests.
I shall keep in close touch with affairs at home, Lord Brookeborough said. I have received many expressions of goodwill. I know that I am leaving government business in very capable hands. These were his farewell words, and with them, we wish you good night.